You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Bringing you news from the local area and around the world. One of the aims of the show is to increase awareness and participation in sport. On the show, we've been very, very fortunate to have interviews from the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, trainers, sports psychologists, you name it, they've been on the show. We've also have a segment where we speak to some of the most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields who share some of the insights, which is fantastic. Today, we have a very fascinating guest. Certainly the last month or so, women's football with the European tournament in the UK is definitely sort of built some traction. But one thing for sure is a lot of people who do a lot of hard work throughout the year and sort of hopefully as a result of a lot of the hard work that's been going in the game for a number of years now, we get more people coming to games week in, week out. So who better to talk about the game, at sort of club level than today's guest who gives insight what it involves running a club, also the ins and outs of the ongoings of football, women's football. Stephen Maddock, the owner and CEO of Barnsley Women's Football Club. Welcome to the show, Steve. Great to have you on board.
Yeah, hello Jimmy, how are you doing? Yeah,
very good, thanks, Steve. And Steve, let's sort of start with yourself in terms of getting involved in football. What was your inspiration to sort of to get involved with Barnsley Women's Football Club?
Well, it was about 5 years ago, really, Jim. I've had a bit of a lifetime in football, and I was approached to become the manager of Barnsley FC Ladies, and I thought about it. I'm getting on a bit now, and I didn't think I could go on the training field 3 or 4 times a week. So I looked at the club in general, and the women's first team were in the FA Women's National League Division 1 North, and they had a really sound junior club, but they were struggling in the first team, and they really needed some impetus. So I've got quite a few good friends who are involved in football, and we decided that we'd make an offer for the club, take it over, and begin again, really. So that's how it all happened.
Brilliant. And what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges for you, sort of, Steve, since you've sort of taken over the club? What are some of the sort of challenges that you could share with our listeners in terms of what it's like to sort of be the owner of a football club?
Okay, so initially we were linked with Barnsley the men's team, and to be honest, we never got that much help. We got 2 free kits a year, and we got the use of their academy training ground on a Tuesday evening. Of course, we had to pay for it, which is fine. And a few times our girls would be travelling from Manchester, Nottingham, Leeds to come and train, and at 7:30 the boys' academy had put a game on, and our girls would have to wait till the end of the game, wouldn't be getting home till 12 o'clock at night. Anyway, it never worked out with Barnsley men for one reason or another, and I said the biggest problem we have, and probably a lot of women's clubs in the country have, our facilities. We've got nowhere to train, and we don't have our own ground. So and a lot of people who are listening to this will understand women's facilities are just virtually non-existent. I don't know, a lot of people know women's football was banned for 50 years, up until 1972. So all the facilities were taken by men's and boys' clubs, which is, it helped me to get to professional football as a male in football. But when you look back at it now, it is so difficult for women's clubs. And so we've been working hard now for the last 3 years to get the first women's bespoke stadium built. So that's the biggest thing that we're trying to do now at Barnsley.
No, absolutely, and you've made some really good points there, interesting points there, Steve, that we'll touch on for sure in more detail. But in terms of the highlights so far, I mean, obviously sort of, I know, obviously work in progress, and but so far, what would you say the highlights have been up to this point, Steve?
Well, the highlights were 2 years ago, just before COVID, we were top of our league. We were unbeaten. We had games in hand, and with about 6 games to go, the promotion was within our reach. We got through to the 4th round of the FA Cup against Tottenham Hotspur. We played against a women's Super League team down there. Took 300 fans down to London. That was just the highlight so far. We won the County Cup against higher league opposition as well, in front of a lot of people at Rotherham United, and things were looking good. But unfortunately, as we know, COVID came and the women's league was null and voided, unlike the men's league where they got points per game. But that's another story. And after that, our players left for teams in a higher league than you would play there, so we've had a rebuilding process going on, but things are looking promising for this year.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Steve. And in terms of, say, I mean, you've spoken about facilities and a number of other sort of challenges in the game. I mean, what can sort of people do? Like, obviously, sort of attending games would be a good start, and hopefully, off the back of the England's women success in the Euros, we get more people going to games. But I mean, what can people do in terms of getting more involved, Steve, to sort of help out in women's football? What in terms of your sport?
Well, definitely we need coaches. We need people to actively get involved and take teams. At our club this year, we could probably have had another 3 teams with the demand with the girls to play next year in leagues, in the Sheffield and Hallamshire leagues. But we don't have that, conveyor belt of people wanting to coach and to look after teams. As a dad myself with 2 young boys, with having a background in football, I obviously took over their team and ran it while they were, young enough to play. But there's a lot of things out there to help people who are thinking about it. For instance, our club now, we've had grants to put new coaches through the badges and certificates, so it won't cost anybody anything. And I'm sure that goes with a lot of women's clubs around the country. They'll be exactly the same. We just want more volunteers. We want people to be proud of the women's team in their town. And at the end of the day, it is something to be proud of.
Absolutely, Steve, that's for sure. And you've made some really good points there, and I think that one thing's for sure, that the public in England certainly got behind the team, and like they do with sport in general, I think, sort of raising that awareness. But what it does highlight is certainly a lot of people doing a lot of hard work in the background, and sort of hopefully as a result of the success of the national team, we see more people getting involved, more sort of coaches as well. And I suppose a point of consideration is I think for me, Steve, what the England women's team achieved is phenomenal. Based on obviously, how far it's progressed in the last few years. The game here, certainly the game like on the continent in Germany. They've had a lot of coaches and team players have been full time for a long time. We know in the States they've got a strong college system. What do you think, that we need to do to make sure, because we like success obviously in England, people like to sort of, it's great, but to sort of carry that success on, to sort of keep making sure that players are coming through, what do you think needs to happen based on your experience, Steve, to sort of keep the conveyor belt of players coming through?
Well, slowly it is happening. People talk about obviously Lionesses, which is a great role model for everybody, and the Women's Super League. But they don't realise that the Women's FA National League is the largest league in England for women, and they don't realise that we have no funding. We don't have a sponsor for the Women's FA Women's National League. Nothing comes down to the clubs. Slowly we're seeing help. Last year we were paying on average £150 for officials for a match. So you would think £150 officials, we were paying £100 for the hire of the ground. We've got to find £250 every week, just to survive. So facilities, women need facilities, and councils and independent organisations need to help this happen, so our game can grow. Once we get that, then things will be on track. But unless people like, for instance, Barnsley Council are helping us, but things seem to have stalled, unless somebody says, right, enough's enough, let's build something for women. I've just been to Denmark, Jimmy. I've been lucky enough to go to Denmark to our sister club in Copenhagen, and they have got a small stadium.
Yeah.
They've got 10 training fields, and it was all provided by the city council.
Yeah. Wow. So, yeah. I mean,
it's amazing. Different takes on things. How hard do we have to knock on the door to say, help us? Give us a chance, because people are going on about women shouldn't get the same wages as men. Now, until the television rights and the crowds are the same as men's, then that is never going to happen. Let's be honest and fair about it. But the game needs to grow, and I think the Lionesses has proved that there's a passion there, and so we need to get facilities and get people coming to support the girls.
Yeah, and absolutely, that's a great point. And in terms of, say, sort of people listening who do want to sort of come down and watch the team play, be it Barnsley or obviously the show goes out in a number of different areas as well. But what can they do to sort of come down and sort of watch Barnsley play, Steve? What's the sort of setup in terms of getting down? And I know obviously the team play in different places, but what can they do to sort of pop down? How does that work in terms of getting to the ground and watching team play?
Yeah, for instance, we've got a friendly this week, believe it or not, against Salford City. We're playing Salford City. Women's football usually takes place on a Sunday afternoon, so it doesn't clash with male football on Saturdays predominantly. If you Google Salford City Lionesses, there'll be a full fixture list on their Twitter and Facebook. Everybody's getting into the social media, so it's not hard to find out what's happening. The local county FAs, they run a thing called Weetabix Wildcats, which is aimed at 5 to 11-year-old girls who have never played who want to get into football. We have 3 of these in Barnsley, and we're just churning out teams every year because of it. Weetabix Wildcats is a fantastic start for young girls to get into football, and for parents to get actively involved in coaching and the women's game. So there's a lot out there, and the FA are doing a good thing at grassroots, but it's not funding for teams such as ours to progress and to expand, really.
That's interesting. That's for sure. Just on that as well, this show being a pre-record, so it may go after the game. But equally, if that's the case, Steve, what's the sort of website they can check Barnsley out in terms of like having a look at fixtures and games? And is there like a website that they can look to see?
Yeah, we have a website. We're on Pitch Hero. So if anybody just types Barnsley Women's Football Club into the search engine, Google, whatever, our Twitter page, our Facebook page, Instagram, and website will automatically come up. We're putting posts out regularly. We've got a media guy from the university who works for us free of charge. All our staff are volunteers. Our manager, she travels from Manchester 3 times a week. We're fortunate to be able to pay a little bit of expenses to the players for the petrol and things like that, but she does it because she believes in it. And that goes with all the volunteers in Barnsley Women's Football Club. Nobody takes a penny out of it. I have to find about £35,000 a year in sponsorship just to keep the club afloat. And you can imagine that's pretty hard work.
When you say sort of like finding sponsorship, I mean, how can sort of people get involved in the area, Steve, who sort of are passionate about the game and think, okay, well, I've seen the sort of the Lionesses, what it means to the country. Obviously, supporting the local town's a big thing for a lot of people. What are some things that they can do in terms of reaching out if they want to get involved on that sort of level?
Well, we have different varying degrees of sponsorship. Again, if you go onto our Twitter, there are things out there. Just do messages and DM us about further information. But it's easy. Easy to contact me, anybody in the club, and we've got a list of sponsorship packages and things that are a bit different. We have a Friends of Barnsley. We've got quite a few businessmen involved in that. We meet 2 or 3 times a year with a manager. We do all sorts of things, and you've got to think out of the box. We have player sponsorship packages, obviously the usual boards around the ground. But yeah, we have to be innovative to give something back to the sponsors as well, because that's important, and get them involved in the club, basically.
Absolutely. And in terms of the season, Steve, how does that run, just for our listeners, in terms of like what's the sort of structure to the season? Is it how many sort of teams and how many rounds is there?
Yeah, so there's 12 teams in every league in the UK, Championship, Women's Super League, and all the leagues below that. So we're in the fourth tier. We're in the top 94 teams in the country, which is equivalent to League Division 2 in the men's game. So 12 games. We start on the 21st of August. That's when the league starts, and we finish at the end of April. There's games virtually every weekend. We have a women's League Cup. We have a women's FA Cup, and then there's a county cup as well. So there's a lot of fixtures. We play each other home and away. Last year, Newcastle United in our league, they had 23,000 people turn up.
Wow.
We were supposed to play them at St James's Park, but the County FA made us play in the County Cup final, unfortunately, and we missed out on that. But that's the level of support. There is, the FA Women's National League. All the tables are on the Facebook and on the internet. And there's talks that the FA National League is going to be on the BBC Scores this year. So slowly but surely, things are happening. The FA intimating that the early rounds of the FA Cup are going to be screened this year. So who knows? You might be Barnsley. We played Salford City last year in the FA Cup. That might be screened live. You never know. But things are moving.
Brilliant.
And it's quite easy to find out who's playing who and when.
Brilliant. And sort of what's the sort of vision, Steve? I mean, obviously yourself, you sort of got a lot of experience in the game and you're very knowledgeable and got a vast amount of experience. I mean, I'm sure that some of it are going to be sort of in sort of confidence where you'd like to see the team be. But as a general rule, what would you like to see for Barnsley? Where would you? What's the sort of the vision for you for the club?
Well, my dream is to walk out at Barnsley at Wembley in the FA Cup final. That's a dream, but we all dream, and sometimes dreams come true. But in reality, we think we have the infrastructure and board members to take us and play in the Championship, which is semi-professional and one below the Super League. If anybody out there who really wants to put millions and millions into us, like Newcastle United have with their women, then give me a ring. I'm not bothered doing it. Give me a ring. The girls at Newcastle are going fully professional in our league this year. 25 grand. It's been suggested that they're getting a player, which is great for the game, but not good for us. But it's happening.
That's going to be the thing to beat.
We're putting bricks in the wall. We're building a solid base. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting an emerging talent centre for the juniors. We're going to get our own stadium, hopefully, and then we can push to bring good football to Barnsley and not lose Barnsley girls to other towns. That's what we want to do.
Definitely. And I suppose you could say, like with Newcastle there, I mean, obviously, your role is to concentrate on Barnsley, but just sort of as a sideline, I think there is extra pressure on them as well, I would think, Steve, to deliver, I would think, because in the day, if they've sort of got that sort of funding, you expect results, to be honest. So
Jimmy, the pressure's on them big style. If you look at their pre-season results, and nobody can really go by pre-season, they haven't been brilliant, and whereas we had a real turn of fortune. We beat Burnley away, we drawn with Huddersfield, both in the league above. We've recruited really well. Lois Daniels, our manager, she's brought some fantastic girls into the club, and we've got a real buzz about the place. Now we've got nothing to lose.
Brilliant.
Newcastle, there's pressure on there, and if they don't perform, there's going to be all sorts of irons going up there.
Absolutely.
They're expected to win, and when people are expected to win, we've seen what happens at the highest men's level.
Oh, absolutely, that's for sure, and like it's one of them really sort of, I suppose if you've got a team that's organised and things are sort of, sort of organised on and off the pitch, then it's always, you're out there, you're competitive, anything can happen in sort of football. I mean, it's like you get on a run, momentum, and who knows what's possible. I think that, that makes for an exciting season ahead, and I certainly would encourage any sort of listeners to sort of get involved and, obviously everyone sort of enjoyed the Euros, and I think for me this is a great opportunity for people to get more involved in the game, and hopefully sort of keep producing. And I think that's the thing, Stephen. It's important, obviously, not just to have a strong Super League, but have a strong championships and sort of a strong tier of football to make sure that players are coming through it and are playing competitive football every week. I mean, that's how you produce top players, by having competitive football, to be fair. So I think it's a really important that sort of keeps going. But I want to thank you for coming on board, Steve. It's been really interesting speaking to you. That listeners have sort of got a lot out of it, really sort of informative and interesting interview, that's for sure. So hopefully as a result, if it's sort of one person as a result sort of takes up the game or gets involved in some capacity, then it's job done, really. So I'd like to think that people have sort of taken something away from this interview. So it's a great interview, Steve. Exciting season ahead, and we keep going. That was Steve Maddock, the owner and CEO of Barnsley Women's Football Club, who was kind enough to join us to give us an insights into his role and the club and the forthcoming season on the Friday Sports Show, Salford City Radio. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.